The 17th and early 18th century saw the meteoric rise of the Kingdom of Sweden, from a small backwards nation to a great Baltic power. One young king, crowned at the age of 15, would lead this Swedish empire both to the heights of its glory and the depths of its defeat. Join with us as we explore the battles of the Great Northern War. After witnessing the ease with which the Swedish forces had ousted the Saxon army from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the campaigns of 1701 and 1702, the noble Sapieha family threw in their lot with King Charles's invading force. The Sapieha family, once the most powerful magnate in the Polish and Lithuanian Commonwealth, had fallen on hard times since the ascension of Augustus II to the throne. Augustus, fearful of the control the Sapiehas exercised throughout the Commonwealth, had systematically stripped them of their authority and their positions of power. At the outbreak of the Great Northern War in 1700, Augustus allowed the Sapiehas to once again raise their own private troops to support the war effort, much to the dismay of the Oginski magnate, who had benefited greatly from the Sapiehas' fall from grace. Together with a collection of other minor magnates, the Oginski family created an anti-Sapieha coalition, calling themselves the Republicans. Under the guise of raising troops for the war effort, the Republicans created an army and marched on the still mustering Sapieha forces, crushing them at the Battle of Volcaninkai on November 18, 1700. The vindictive minor magnates then declared their foe, Magnate Jan Sapieha, illegitimate, plundering his family's estates and even killing his son, who was sent as an envoy to negotiate a ceasefire. Jan Sapieha fled to Warsaw and begged King Augustus to intervene, but Augustus simply used the conflict as an excuse to move his Saxon army to Lithuania in preparation for his planned Livonian campaign. As the Swedish army moved through Lithuania in early 1702 in pursuit of the retreating Saxon army, Jan Sapieha approached King Charles with an offer. In exchange for being returned to power in Lithuania, the Sapieha family agreed to raise an army to support the Swedish king. With King Augustus retreating southwest, and the Sapiehas throwing in their lot with the Swedish, the Oginskis sent a letter to Peter I of Russia requesting aid. Peter agreed to send 2,500 veteran Russian troops who had just been released from the recently ended war against the Ottoman Empire. Together with their new Russian allies, the Oginski's army marched north to strike at the small Swedish defensive forces in Courland. In response to this new threat from the Lithuanian and Russian troops, General Adam Leeuwenhout gathered together what forces he could find and marched towards the recently captured city of Birzai. Upon his arrival, the Swedish scouts came back with reports that the combined Lithuanian and Russian army had swollen to just over 6,000 troops, dwarfing his hastily gathered 1,100 troops. Instead of offering battle, General Lewenhaupt decided to withdraw towards Riga and gather more reinforcements. Hetman Grzegorz Oginski, in command of the Lithuanian and Russian forces, rushed to catch up to the Swedish troops while he still held a numerical advantage. When Oginski forces managed to get between his troops and the safety of Riga, on March 29th, General Lewenhaupt decided to make his stand just outside the small town of Salociai. Initially, Hetman Oginski ordered the Russian infantry to march through the nearby wooded area in order to catch the Swedish troops by surprise. But as reports from his advanced scouts came filtering in, it soon became apparent that General Lewenhaupt had already formed up his troops in battle lines, and so the Russian and Lithuanian troops abandoned their ruse and formed up in battle order. The Russian veterans took up the left flank, setting up a barrier of cheval de frise and supply wagons to protect themselves from cavalry attack, while the Lithuanian troops took up their positions on the right flank and prepared to attack. On the Swedish side of the battlefield, General Lewenhaupt, recognizing that his troops would be swamped by the sheer number of enemy troops if they remained on the defensive, ordered his troops to prepare to attack. General Lewenhaupt took command of the Swedish right wing, while Colonel Klott was given command of the left wing, with Swedish artillery concentrated in the center. The two wings advanced, and as they reached 100 paces, the Russian troops opened fire as the Lithuanian cavalry and infantry charged towards the Swedish left wing. The Lithuanian cavalry charge faltered as they came under heavy infantry fire, and the Swedish pikemen, who were dispersed throughout their formations, presented a nearly impenetrable wall of pikes. As the Lithuanian cavalry fell back, the infantry formations began to line up and trade volleys with the Swedish troops, though they too soon fell back as the Lithuanian formations were ill-trained and disorganized by their hasty advance. As the Swedish left wing dealt with the Lithuanian attacks, the Swedish right flank, under the command of General Lewenhaupt, continued their advance under heavy Russian fire. Just as the Swedish troops were reaching the barricades that the Russian troops had set up, the Lithuanian troops who had previously been repulsed by Colonel Klott now fell upon the Swedish flank and rear. Chaos reigned as both Swedish troops and their Lithuanian and Russian counterparts fought to make sense of the battlefield amidst the heavy smoke from their guns. Colonel Klott, the majority of his troops still reorganizing from their fight minutes earlier, ordered his grenadiers to charge the Lithuanian troops that were falling upon General Lewenhaupt's exposed troops, while he himself rallied what cavalrymen he could find and charged into the Lithuanian flank. The combined assault shattered the Lithuanian troops' morale, sending them fleeing from the field. With his flank now free, General Lewenhaupt resumed his attack on the Russian positions, finally pushing past their barricades, where the superior reach of the Swedish pikes absolutely tore through the Russian formations. The veteran Russian troops, who had not experienced such aggressive infantry tactics on the Ottoman front, threw down their arms and fled. Though the Swedish troops had lost less than 200 men while inflicting 1,500 casualties on the enemy, General Lewenhaupt decided against pursuit, and instead ordered his cavalry to harass the enemy as the Swedish withdrew towards Courland. After his defeat the previous year at the Battle of Klisau, Augustus the Strong had taken the remnants of his defeated army back towards Saxony. As the spring of 1703 came, however, Augustus devised a plan to retake the Polish capital, with the hope of gaining the support of the Polish nobility. To that end, Augustus traveled to Torun, at that time an impressive fortress, and started gathering troops there. As April arrived, this new Saxon army, under the command of General Adam Heinrich von Steinau, marched towards Warsaw, encamping at Pultusk in late April 1703. King Charles, who had wintered his troops in Warsaw, began mobilizing the Swedish infantry. But, due to the numerous river crossings on their route, he knew that his infantry and artillery would be slow to reach Pultusk. Instead of waiting for his troops to make a slow march towards the Saxon army, King Charles took his entire cavalry force, numbering roughly 3,000 men, and quickly rode towards Pultusk, reaching the city on May 1st, 1703. As Swedish cavalry began to arrive on the outskirts of the city, General Steinau initially dismissed the threat as merely a scouting force. However, as more and more cavalry began to appear, General Steinau, who had suffered defeats at the hands of smaller Swedish armies at the crossing of the Duna and at the Battle of Klisau, began to panic and immediately ordered the Saxon army to withdraw. As he saw the Saxon forces making a hasty withdrawal, King Charles immediately ordered his cavalry to take the bridge into the city, while he sent a regiment of dragoons on a wide flanking maneuver in order to block the Saxons' retreat. As the Swedish cavalry charged towards the Saxons, their ordered retreat quickly devolved into a panic-stricken rout. Swedish cavalry crashed into the fleeing Saxons, driving them across the bridge and through the streets, slaughtering all the troops in their path. At the same time, the Swedish dragoons completed their flanking maneuver and began threatening the only bridge by which the Saxon forces were able to retreat. With this new threat to their escape route, the Saxon engineers prematurely blew the bridge, trapping large numbers of Saxon troops in the city. Many soldiers threw down their arms and surrendered, while the rest attempted to swim across the river. As the fighting drew to a close, the Saxon army was completely crushed, losing close to 500 men killed or wounded, and an additional 800 soldiers captured, while the Swedish lost only 20 troopers killed and another 20 wounded. With the Saxon army scattered and his infantry still making its way toward Pultusk, King Charles decided to deal once and for all with the fortress of Torun, the last major Saxon stronghold in Poland. If you enjoyed this documentary on the road to Torun, please consider liking the video as it really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you won't miss the next episode of The Battles of the Great Northern War.